Welcome to Expedition Networking, a special segment of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this program. For those of you who are familiar, on the Networking RX podcast, we share information and have conversations with experts, such as authors, researchers, and social scientists. And all of these programs are aimed at helping you learn how to become better at building professional relationships and understanding why they work. In this Expedition Networking segment, however, we're going to bring on successful entrepreneurs and unique professionals and explore their networking adventure and learn how they used relationships to create lasting success. Today on Expedition Networking, we have Deb Coviello. She's the author of CEO Compass, your guide to getting back on track, and she's the host of the Drop-In CEO podcast. After 25 years in quality and operational excellence roles, Deb has a deep understanding of what's important when it comes to creating solutions for CEOs by assessing the landscape, solving their technical business issues, and elevating their people for lasting impact and ultimately peace of mind. She's here today to help share a bit of how the CEO Compass can bring you peace of mind. And I'm going to also tap into her to learn a little bit about her journey, where she's come from, where she's at now, and how relationships have really played into that. So, Deb, welcome to the program.
Frank, it is my pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to have a great conversation with both you and your audience.
Well, great. I appreciate that. You're welcome. So I guess give us your story. You just didn't have a book. You just didn't have a business. It all builds up, right?
It absolutely does. And I would be remiss if I wouldn't say that, my partner in crime, my husband, Dan, coming up on an anniversary of 33 years and 3 wonderful children, he had the insight to say, Deb, you can be a plant manager, you can be a CEO. And I said, no, I can't. I don't have those skills. I don't want that role. That's hard. But you know what? Sometimes you need relationships with the right people that can see your value. Yeah. And ultimately, if you listen, they might be right. So going back.
Well, I'm married too, and trust me, I get a lot of, I told you that years ago.
Well, don't tell me I told you so, because that's the worst thing for me.
Yeah.
Very independent, latchkey generation. Don't tell me what to do. However, I've always been strongly independent. That is a good quality, especially my daughter has that. I do have 3 amazing children that we were talking about earlier, that really ultimately parenting is the greatest gift that we can give, or even being a significant person in somebody's life. But going back, way back, a creative person, thought I was going to be a writer, thought I was going to be into the arts and things like that, but later switched into being a STEM professional, wound up getting an engineering degree, going into manufacturing, loving problem solving, and being able to give back to business. And ultimately, I did move from different industries, aerospace into electronics, ultimately into the chemical and flavor and fragrance industry. I did move into higher roles in the area of operational excellence and quality, where I had quite a few people working for me. And I was responsible for not only quality and protecting a brand for our customers, but also very critical, the safety of our products. So we protect the people. And so an amazing amount of responsibility. And I have the good fortune of working for amazing companies over the years, but then later having the opportunity to transition into forming my own business, Illumination Partners, and branding myself as the Drop-In CEO. So I'm not just a business consultant, but I will drop in and partner with senior business leaders who are growing through some kind of rapid transformation. And not only do we fix those problems, but there's a very strong human component. I talk about human-centric leadership in the CEO's Compass, where we elevate the people, their capability and their capacity to do good work. Because when people like me pull out of those businesses and move on, we have to leave a lasting impact and give people the ability to do the work and grow from that experience. So that's kind of the technical journey, but I didn't do it alone. There was a lot of people along the way that were part of that journey.
Now, what was the impetus to leave the corporate world? And I know the corporate world is scary. My wife has a corporate job. Being on your own is scary too, in a different way.
Yeah. So I used to hide the fact, but I was actually ultimately let go. And that was just fine because probably for about 3, 4 years, I was thinking differently. And while I was getting corporate results, heads down, doing transactions, I was also starting to question and say my leadership and how we elevate people, how we build capabilities, and we should be focusing on building human capital versus simply the transaction, because those are the leading indicators and things we should focus on for longevity. And that fell on deaf ears and that wasn't celebrated. So I knew for a while I was a little different and I needed to move in another direction. So, given the opportunity to say thank you, but we won't need your services anymore, I knew that I could serve others still. And so, the time of
I
self
gotcha.
discovery and doubt and figuring it out and reaching out to my network to try to figure it out and how I can serve others and build illumination partners.
Yeah, I talked to over the years doing what I do with networking. I've been asked to speak with a lot of people about being in transition.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of people who transition back into the corporate world, some more permanently than others, but a lot of people who've kind of taken your path, and they reflect back on that moment being told your services are no longer needed as being one of the best moments in their life. The hardest thing at that moment, but one of the best things to happen to them, because it forced them. Maybe I don't want to say yeah, I guess it forced them to do something that they probably needed to do anyways.
So, if I can react to that, the
Yeah.
story goes preceding that. I remember being in the middle of a tremendous amount of chaos within that environment. And I'm a resilient person. I keep a level, steady voice because I need to support my people. But I would come home at night and I said, I just can't keep this up. Something's got to change. Normal ways of getting yourself back in balance and relaxing and removing yourself from the corporate environment were no longer working. So I kept saying something needed to change. Maybe it was my crystal ball, but then something did change. And so it was the best thing that happened. So while again, in the moment, it was like, hey, honey, guess what? At the same time, the company treated with me with the utmost respect and had a wonderful exit from that business. So I have no ill will against them. And I was afforded the time, again, to figure out what could I do differently and have an impact, but on my own terms.
Yeah. Years ago, I worked in public accounting. I was a tax consultant, and similar thoughts, maybe different, but similar. Just wasn't feeling good about it, and confiding in my mom, where I was at, and really wanting to get out of there. Not happy is the best way to describe it. Not
Mhm.
fulfilled. And she sent me a book, and I still have it here somewhere. I've never gotten rid of it, but there was a story in there about a guy who was afraid of heights, climbing up on a building that was under construction, and he slipped and was falling, just hanging on for dear life. And he, speaks out. He says, "Dear God, don't let me fall." And God answers back and says, "Then jump." and that still sticks with me, because that was really kind of, okay, I get the message. I was so afraid of things not working out. I just needed to leave. And so I had a different path out, but it probably I should have waited, because you got a good package and I just left.
Hey,
So
I actually have. I've been let go a few times. And you know what? It is not easy, but it's one of those things that in that moment, okay, so you have a little pity party for about 10, 15 minutes.
yep.
Then you get on the phone and you start contacting your recruiters. That's what we did in the day. Get that resume brushed off and then really starting to reach out to the network. So, yes, I was thrown a few curveballs and it happens to the best of us. But I would say just being resilient, saying, okay, well, I can't control that now, but what can you control? And that's one of the things that I mentor others is, yeah, it feels bad you weren't in control of that moment, but think about what you are in control of. And so that is the first thing I did when I left the corporate environment. I started reaching out to all my first degree networking, people that I knew. And, it was uncomfortable because they said, well, Deb, what do you do? And I remember the first time going out to lunch with an old colleague that I really respected, and I couldn't get my 30-second elevator pitch. And from that point on, I said, I'm never going to be in that place ever again. Now, he was a kind soul. He brought me into the organization. It was my first consulting gig, and I'm forever grateful for that. But it was through that networking that doors started opening. And it's not easy being in business for yourself, as you know, but the network might help you immediately. There could be a lull, but continue to invest in it, because sometimes people that I've networked with, I get a phone call 6 months later and then they say, Deb, we need your help. You just don't know how it's going to come back around.
Yeah, no, we had that conversation before we hit record. Sometimes this just doesn't seem like you're doing things that doesn't seem like it's making any sense. The people I reach out to and feel like, hey, this is a perfect contact, turns out to be disappointing. And the person that, what am I doing, turns out to be kind of a great connection. And there's no rhyme or reason, or there probably is. It's just not privy to me.
That would be a great book if we could get that one written, because honestly, you said you have to have faith in the networking. You never know if it's that person in front of you or two or three people down the road. It may be somebody like, oh, that conversation didn't go really well. But I just recently met somebody who introduced me to somebody, and they were both really smart people, very introverted and very few in their words. And here I am, I'm a talker. I'm asking them a lot of questions, trying to create flow and conversation, and it wasn't going there. But you know what? They were really listening to what I could do possibly for their business. You could see them thinking about where their connections were. I believe that one may come around, even though in the moment the conversation didn't feel like it flowed like it could, because I find sometimes the people that talk a lot don't listen very well, and you really don't get anywhere with that relationship. So I would not write off those conversations that maybe there wasn't a lot of flow, because I think people are trying to build trust and trying to get to know you. And again, I'm still evolving, but if we could write a book to help us focus and figure out which ones will get us to something that we can produce value, great. But I do say that I'm still riding that train, and I'm very patient, because I believe the power of networking is going to come back around, whether I can serve or somebody can help serve me as well.
No, I think, your story, the message your story gave to me, at least, is you have to read the room, because I tell people you need to try to get the other person talking, but sometimes that's not what the room is saying. It's saying, I'm a listener, so please talk. Let me back up real quick here. You had said, earlier that, you were kind of a nose to the grindstone type person in the corporate world. And I think a lot of people are. I know my wife is. She will routinely get up at 4:30 in the morning because she has a thought or whatever. But now you're really kind of a people person. At what point did you recognize, hey, wait a minute, there's something to these relationships? Because for me, I was always of the mind, okay, I've got a law degree, I've got an MBA, keep getting credentials, got a CPA, keep doing this, you'll be unstoppable. And really, there are lots of people with those things. It does come down to the relationships.
So I'd love to react to that. So first of all, building relationships and networking, I've actually had to work really hard at, because it's, as an introvert, possibly, in trying to find what are those touch points and connections that they'll find me interesting, it's hard. So I will actually say I continue to this day, read the room and try to find a connection very quickly so that it looks easy, like I'm a people person. But I think I've always been a people person, but over time in society, because I was such a talker, they asked me to be quiet. And I talk about this over and over again. In school, I was labeled as disruptive. So Deb got quiet. As soon as Deb would start speaking up, Deb, stop asking so many questions in advanced math class, but I don't understand. Stop asking questions, be quiet. Corporate, I raise my voice. I say, why are we doing this? I don't agree with this, only to be told to be, you shouldn't have said that. And so I think society over time, if you have something to say and it's not appealing, people will tell you to be quiet. And so I have had to reemerge over and over again. I think I am a people person, but now I'm getting smarter about looking at the person in front of me and trying to find the points of connection that I can serve, and maybe they can serve me well. Again, that's one of my superpowers, is listening and also talking and just trying to find what problem can I solve or how can I serve this person. So I make it look easy. I do love talking. But you also have to continue to work at it and hone your craft.
Was there a moment when you realized, hey, this is, and maybe there wasn't a moment, I don't know.
I rediscovered it. So again, when I left corporate and finding my way and what business was I going to create for myself, I did go through a lot of soul searching. And again, thank goodness I had the time to do that. And there was one particular, actually several authors that I read about. One was Margie Worrell, and it was about being brave. And ultimately I had to ask myself the question, what was holding myself back? And the only thing was me, because anybody that told me to be quiet no longer existed or were relevant. And then one of my two mentors once told me, Deb, get over yourself. Stop showing up on video being so rigid. Just be yourself. And as soon as I got past that and said, you know what? I like myself. I like the way I look. I like what I say. And you know what? Other people like it as well. I finally realized I can speak, I can communicate, and I can build relationships. So I don't think anybody's ever going to quiet me ever again.
And maybe you've answered this question, but I'll ask it. If you could go back to high school, Deb, senior year, and whisper in her ear, not that she would listen, but what advice might you give her? Well, you know what? You have three amazing kids, as you said. What are the things that you try to share with them? Because I think we try to do that with our kids. We try to guide them around. I mean, obviously the big issues, don't do drugs, things like that. But just even I find with my kids, just little nuances about how to be in business.
Oh God, there's so many lessons in that. I mean, you brought me to a soulful place as I'm thinking myself back to my senior year. I wanted to speak up. I haven't done it yet, but I wrote a speech for my graduation, and I thought it was the best speech that I could have written. And I wasn't selected. And so my voice was never heard. And so again, another disappointment. I didn't think that I could write and I could speak because I wasn't selected in that moment. But I think at the end of the day, when I look at my three children, I just wrote an article on this. I think we always encourage them to march to their own beat. My middle son, David, he didn't follow the status quo. He was often labeled as disruptive. He marched to his own beat. And now when we look back, those people that conformed really haven't been productive citizens of society, while he now has marched to his own beat. He has weathered the storm of adversarial relationships, and he's now serving in our military in Europe and being a productive citizen. My daughter, she expresses her emotion. And sometimes people say, oh, you shouldn't act that way. But I celebrate that as having a strong sense of character and knowing who you are and how you feel, and don't be afraid to express it, but also know the impact of expressing and having an adult meltdown. She has the emotional intelligence to know that I can speak out, but also understand the impact I have on others. So those are some lessons. And my son, Dan, he's also very amazing, has spoken all over the world and has set out a voice for the youth to impact society. I think my message to me is, don't be afraid, speak up, be strong. Somebody's out there that's going to listen, and you will make an impact. I just wish I had more of that. But if I couldn't have had that now, I'm certainly doing that now and with the people that I impact as well.
You still have that speech you wrote?
It is sitting in a basket down on the in my office, and I plan on doing a solo podcast on the Drop-In CEO podcast, and I am going to read the speech that was never read.
Oh, when you get it out, let me know. I will get it out for you. I'll help tweet it out. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It's meant to be read, and you know what? I don't care if it doesn't resonate with anybody, but if it resonates with one person, that's all that matters.
No, I think that's the attitude to have. I mean, you might consider expanding it into a book. I mean, here's the speech. Let me take you through this, and here's all the examples where this is played out. And I've written a number of books, and that's always been Well, it hasn't always been. At one point it was, hey, you want to be that best-selling author, everybody does. But I come to realize that it's really about impacting individuals. And,
I would love to react to that. When I set out on writing the CEO's Compass, there are different strategies to both writing the book as well as marketing the book. And I was very clear from the beginning. I could have hired a publicist and gone with a mainstream publisher. I did not. I said, my aspiration is not to be a number one bestseller, because at the end of the day, they're just numbers. It's about the impact of having one person, two people, three people read the book and say, that chapter on such and such, that really resonated with me. Or because of that, I finally did X. This year is my theme. The theme is to be the inspirationalist. And every time somebody says, because I said, did, or wrote something, and there's even somebody in our networking group that loved that blog post that I did, because we put our content, our thoughts out into the world, if we can just impact one person, we've left the impact. And that is truly the essence of the relationships and making a difference.
I had a conversation with Diana this week, and she brought it up. She is tickled to death that she met you. Well, let's change gears here as we wrap up. Let's talk about your business, what you're looking for, how people can get a hold of you. Obviously, you've got the podcast out there, the Drop-In CEO, that people can listen to and share with others. Everybody out there knows somebody who probably can resonate with certain aspects of it. But I guess talk about, how the audience could possibly help you.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I mean, the Drop-In CEO podcast, I talk to amazing leaders, CEOs, business leaders, and it's not just what they do, but it's how they leave a lasting impact, how they do the work they do through others. So if you're looking for free content, for insights and inspiration, regardless of where you're at in your career, it's an amazing resource. But you can also find me on the Drop-In CEO website. I have blog posts. I have more content. I love creating content. And there is also a link where you can click on to get on our wait list to get the CEO's Compass, which is launching very shortly. It is an amazing resource, not only for CEOs who are off track, but any person in their career that's navigating through change. There are insights here for you. But I am looking to connect with CEOs and business leaders, mainly in manufacturing. If they're going through a significant transition, rapid change, loss of leadership, I can help you. I can guide you. I can partner with you. And those are some of the people that I would love to connect with, as well as emerging leaders. I have a sweet spot for you as well.
I guess to clarify real quickly, a lot of times when people hear the word CEO, they think Fortune 500 companies. There are literally thousands of companies out there with 25 plus employees. I don't know. I'm just trying to frame it for people. Geez, I don't know anybody. You probably do.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes. I have had an amazing corporate experience working for companies, 5,000, 10,000 people, but I really resonate with the company that's maybe 25 to 100, maybe $5 to $200 million in sales, one site, multi-site, because I get the honor of working directly with the CEO or senior business leader who is closest to the opportunities, really close to his people, and they just have a can-do attitude. And I just simply resonate with those kinds of people and help them get through those changes. Those are the people that I'm looking to connect with.
Are these, for the most part, privately held companies?
Most of them are. They're usually family owned or third generation. I'll work directly with the founder. However, I've worked with subsidiaries that started out as a small family owned business and recently acquired by a large business, but they're still going through the challenges and growing pains of assimilating into a larger environment. I work well in those environments as well.
Okay. I'm not surprised by that answer. I think when you start dealing with a closely held family-owned business, they have a longer term. They have a longer vision as to where the thing is going, as opposed to, and my wife works for a publicly traded company. It's, numbers,
I know.
And it's harder to have impact.
But my leaders that I work with are about investing in the future. They see the long-term picture. They want to help their people. And sometimes they need just a partner, who gives them a little bit of capability and capacity that they don't currently have, but they recognize the short-term value for a long-term gain.
Okay. Best way to get a hold of you?
Very active on LinkedIn. Look for Deborah A. Coviello or the Drop-In CEO or the Drop-In CEO website. You can click on the contact page and connect directly with me. I would love a conversation, 30 minutes free, just to get to know each other and see if I can help you in some way. And thank you so much for this opportunity, Frank.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.